It's nice
Hi,
to see
Julian.
you.
You all right?
Hi.
Hi, Peter.
I I'll just begin right now. Um, Hi everyone, I am Julian,
Hello.
the marketing manager for LCCH Group. It's very nice to see so many people wanting to learn more about clinical supervision and why it matters. In today's evolving therapeutic landscape, simply being a good therapist is no longer enough. The therapy industry has been growing, and there are predictions that it will exceed the 1 billion trillion mark. This means more new therapies will be coming into the market, and it also means that there will be a growing need to ensure that clients receive therapy from safe and accountable practitioners. In the UK, BACP and UKCP, they have made clinical supervision compulsory for all their members. We expect to see this trend increasing and expanding for all allied healthcare professions worldwide. The LCCH Clinical Supervision course is led by Charles Caruana and Peter Mabbut, who are some of the most experienced therapists in their field. Charles Caruana is the supervision officer for the BSCHIP and the BSCH Society, and Peter is the president of the BSCHIP and a fellow of the NCIP. They will discuss the importance of clinical supervision in therapy and share how therapy centers and professional societies are increasingly required to demonstrate due process to ensure safe, accountable practice, safeguarding clients, and sustaining professional standards. But becoming a clinical supervisor is much more than just about compliance. It is your opportunity to be a leader. At LCCH, we support our clinical supervisors with practical training experiences, BACP recognized training, professional endorsement once you have completed your training, ongoing referrals, and full practice support even after you graduate. We have actively supported the development of clinical supervision in Malaysia and the supervision of clinical therapists in the UK. Here to tell you more about this exciting opportunity is a true pioneer in the field, Mr. Peter Mabbut.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you very much. And welcome, everyone. I will say, if you suddenly notice me looking in that direction, it's not that I've kind of got some twitch going on. I have two screens in front of me. And so you guys, I can see you all on this screen here. So when I look over here, that's what I'm doing. So welcome. Welcome to this exploration of what clinical supervision is, but most importantly, the importance it has and the role that it certainly will have with people, for people like yourselves considering becoming training to become clinical supervisors. Now, we do know and we understand that clinical supervision really started in the early 20th century. And we also know that by the 1970s, it was increasing it was increasing in interest for a wide variety of people. Local authorities were considering its use, and by the mid 1990s, it was fully adopted by, as Julian said, the BACP and the UKCP, and it continues to spread into many different professions. So, from the psychotherapies, it moved into nursing, into social work, into other areas of allied healthcare. It really spread throughout the psychotherapy community and is really now considered an essential for safe and for accountable practice, which is a very important thing to remember: safe and accountable practice. This comes at a time, I know when people like myself, and Charles is here with us, when we came into psychotherapy from our different backgrounds, when we came in, it was a smallish community, big but very small in the grand scheme of things. And we now know that there is a tremendous growth in psychotherapy. And in fact, the powers that be have projected it to become something like a $1 trillion industry as we're moving forward. And because of that, so many psychotherapists out there. We need a framework for, as I said before, safe and accountable practice. We do know, as I'm sure we're all aware, that that society is becoming increasingly litigious, and that therapy centres, professional societies, individual therapists, we need to demonstrate due process if it ever came to being pulled up in a court of law. Luckily, we are not that at risk. It does happen, but as part of that accountability, clinical supervision is vital, and it really is an essential. Basically, many organizations out there are including it now in order to demonstrate safe due process, safe practice, and it's becoming required for practice increasingly in many different professions. We know all reputable professional societies are very much looking at recommending it to their members as standard practice. Many places it's voluntarily, you do it voluntarily. Increasingly it's becoming required. And I think with this in mind, therapists considering becoming clinical supervisors, there's an interesting element here because it's opening up a whole host of new and exciting possibilities for therapists. Now, of course, becoming a clinical supervisor is going to add a new income stream to you. Clinical supervision you get paid for. Being a clinical supervisor does enhance one's reputation because you are being seen as a knowledgeable person within the profession to be able to carry out your role as a clinical supervisor. And from that perspective, let's be honest, clinical supervisors do get referrals from their supervisees should the supervisee feel that they would like to refer on a client. And also, through the role that we take as clinical supervisors, then we've got opportunities, real strong opportunities to be leaders, to be pioneers in whichever particular area of psychotherapy you operate within. Or as we have the whole concept of integrative psychotherapy, become leaders within that perspective as well. And at the LCCH group, we really are invested in supporting clinical supervision. And also, not just that, we're also very invested in supporting our clinical supervisors. And we do have, we are in a wonderful position. Our training is recognised by the BACP. That gives a new market for supervision. We recommend it as trainers, and we recommend our supervisors to our students. And at the end of training, what you'll also get to support you on this is a letter of endorsement and letters of recognition from the college, which allows you to be able to then, really market yourself as a clinical supervisor. And on top of all of this, as part of what we produce, we also provide marketing and practice toolkits for all our graduates with regards to what they're doing out there, part of our commitment to the profession and building a professional space. And I'm talking about clinical supervision. You're here because you wanted to find out about clinical supervision. I'm assuming most of us here know what clinical supervision is, but it never harms to have a reminder of what clinical supervision is about. And here, you've got some elements here on your screen, but to bring it succinctly into a quick statement, essentially what we've got is a structured and collaborative process. Now, structure, collaboration, very important, in which a more experienced practitioner basically supports and will oversee the work of another practitioner in order to ensure safe, ethical and effective client care. As you progress in your ability, sometimes it's two practitioners supervising each other because they both have exactly the same level of understanding. Sometimes we need to be outside the box to be able to help somebody else who's in the box. And the other really nice thing about clinical supervision as part of its definition is it does foster professional development, and it does this through the case discussions, through the reflection that's inherent within clinical supervision, and the feedback, constructive feedback that the supervisor is giving. The other element here as well is there is an element of being able to provide emotional support for perhaps a therapist in turmoil about something, whilst also promoting a level of accountability here with regards to that. And so you've got that element kind of reflected here in this graphic. Very much the resilience is by being able to talk through your emotional responses, your cognitive responses, being able to talk through what your client is experiencing. A therapist who's seeing a clinical supervisor does build their own resilience. And as clinical supervisors, we build our resilience too. Now, people often wonder, well, okay, when does somebody go for clinical supervision? There are many different ways. Certain organizations will require a once a month element. Some will require once every couple of months. Some will just allow it to be an ad hoc experience. When you feel you need to go and see a supervisor, you go and see a clinical supervisor. The point here is that you're getting that support, you're getting the supervisee is getting the support that the supervisor is giving them. There may be a requirement to go and see clinical supervision. So perhaps a supervisee has had an issue with their professional body. The professional body may recommend that that supervisee goes to a clinical supervisor. The point here is clinical supervision is for the supervisee and also for the client's welfare. That's very, very important with regard to what we're saying here. And we're talking about supervision. We're talking about the various ways in which we do it. And there are models of clinical supervision. And believe you me, I know Charles will be taking people through the various models of clinical supervision that are out there, and also encouraging supervisors to develop their own model within the various models that are out there that meets their need. Rosanna, can't hear you, you're muted.
Yeah, hi, Peter. Long time didn't talk to you.
Well, we're talking now, thank goodness.
Yeah. I need to understand a little bit more on this because let's say I have completed my course, right? And I have not gone for any other, I've not signed up for any other courses. Whereas some of my classmates have gone and added on, about EMDR and this and that. So in other words, my classmates are even more qualified than me because they're learning more and more things than me. So how do I end up being a clinical supervisor for my my peers who are actually now, more qualified than myself.
It's not necessarily about qualification, it's about
Okay.
experience. And so, yes, I'm qualified in many different things. Charles is qualified in many different things. It's the experience, and from the experience, the opportunity to allow your supervisee to reflect through that interaction with you, with regards to that. Charles, is there anything you'd like to add to what we've just said? And you need to unmute. We're all doing it today.
Qualifications, it's one of those things that is not straightforward. Of course, the more qualified you are, one could argue the more supervision you can give, the better. It doesn't really work like that. I think what we're talking about, that eventually you develop a certain insight as you supervise, which comes with practice. And you could have a lot of qualifications, but you may not necessarily be a good supervisor.
So, Charles, you mean to say?
Sorry, it's not just the qualifications, in other words. It's how intuitive, how insightful you are into the issues.
Right. So can I say that we're when we talk to a supervisor, we're basically looking for a sounding board where we can discuss certain matters that we are not very sure of. We perhaps want to seek another perspective
That's
from
one aspect of
a
supervision.
colleague. Yeah, maybe
That's-
seek another perspective.
That's one
because-
aspect of supervision, sorry.
Mm.
This being a sounding board, but you are more than just a sounding board as a supervisor. You're a tutor, you're a teacher, you are an administrator. There's various responsibilities that you have to carry besides being just a sounding board. And when you're being used as a sounding board, then your experience, your qualifications, your instincts do come into play.
Mm. So obviously, as a supervisor, we will need to understand even the law pertaining the good practice to ensure that the therapists, they operate within the perimeter of the
Yeah.
law to protect the patient and, of course, our good selves and the good name of the college, right? And
Indeed,
to know
yes.
where to go to should anything go wrong goes, we should know where to refer to. That's what this job of a supervisor, right?
The job of the supervisor is to help you. I always say a supervisor is there to help you develop into your own person as a therapist. In other words, the supervisor, if you come to supervision, to me, for example, my role is not to clone you and make you work like me.
Mhm.
That's not supervision. It's to help you get in touch with your abilities, with your instincts, with your knowledge, and work in your own way, but of course ethically and safely. And you mentioned, legally.
Mm. Mm.
But I
Yeah.
wouldn't clone. I wouldn't say this. This is not how I would do. This is what I would do, and you must do it this way. That, I'm afraid, is not supervision.
Mm. It is
Supervision is about doing something, and I say, how can you have done it differently, for example, and make you think.
it's just like the little voice in their head.
Well, in a way, you could say that. Patrick Caseman wrote a book a long time ago, Learning from the Patient. It's for psychoanalysts, but I'm sure if you read it, you'll find it useful. Learning from the patient. Patrick Caseman brought the notion of the internal supervisor. And the internal supervisor precisely is that little voice that, that when you're with your patient, it begins to inspire you. having to experience sometimes when you are taking the history, for example, of the patient, you're taking the history down, and that voice is already telling you how to proceed with this patient.
Mm. Mm.
And the more you practice, the more you develop that. And supervision enables you to develop that.
So this course to become a clinical supervisor, can you share with me what is the topics or the subjects or the curriculum that is
Can we get to that one shortly? Can we get to that one shortly? Because I'm very aware of time. We'll have plenty of time, and we've got a little bit on the course structure coming up.
Okay, thank you, because that will help me understand it a whole lot more. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for that good question, excellent question. So this thing called clinical supervision, we provide it as, we've just been kind of intimating, as a one-to-one session, the mentor and the mentee, the clinical supervisor and the supervisee, which is a very traditional form of doing that. But there are ways of working with this, which Charles will be teaching you on the course. There's peer supervision. What does that mean? It means two people meet up. Charles and I decide to meet up, go for a coffee somewhere. We're in a private situation, and we talk about our own particular issues, and we give each other a little bit of peer group supervision there. There is also peer group supervision, where a group of colleagues get together and share cases, and there are very specific dynamics that we will talk about with how those will run. There's also the group supervision, which is led by a clinical supervisor. So there are three elements here four elements that we're working with, and what that means. With the mentor-mentee, that's obviously an earning element. With the group clinical supervision, that's also an earning element, because the clinical supervisor gets paid. Anything peer there is no financial transaction that comes in with regard to that. And what's in it for us, for you? Well, basically there's prestige and status, to be able to add to your web presence, the fact that you are a clinical supervisor that has been trained in clinical supervision by our good selves. It really does let clients know that you have this particular standing within the psychotherapy community. There is that additional income stream. We can't ignore that in the way the world is today. But also, I think something that both Charles and I talk about, and I would 100% ascribe to, there is an intellectual and an emotional fulfillment that comes in from it. That's not the reason I do it. It's one of the nice byproducts of what I do. It makes me think. It makes me research. It makes me ensure that I am at the top of my game in order to be able to help other people rise and become, I benefited from clinical supervision when I was trained. I still have clinical supervision. The one thing to remember is that no matter your level of experience, clinical supervision is a very important element of that. As you become more experienced, the way we do clinical supervision does change, or the way we interact with each other does change. And that is part of what we teach in the course, the various stages going through and what each stage involves. So there is that personal, you come out of it, you've helped somebody, that you've helped that person to do the best they can with their with their clients, that you've helped them to feel more confident and more competent. It's a lovely feeling that comes from that. But the most important thing is we're helping our clients to ensure good and effective, our supervisees, sorry, to ensure good and effective therapy with their client, the client outcome always paramount within that. And the course structure. So Charles is the person who is the lecturer here with the course. But, you know, there are essentially 3 teaching weekends, in which Charles takes you through the ins and outs of the what it means to be a clinical supervisor. Do you want to briefly explain a little bit about what you talk about there, Charles?
What I talk about on the course, you mean? Sorry, I didn't catch the last
Yeah.
bit. But
Just what the 3 weekends involve.
The weekends involve basically looking at supervision in general. You've got, I think, if you bear with me, I can't access it right now.
But you're looking at the kind of structured approach within clinical supervision.
It is we look at transference, counter-transference, parallel process, but parallel process is that you could be acting out some problems that actually they're not really yours. You're picking them from the client of the supervisee. The supervisee comes to you with these problems, and then they realize that actually they don't belong to him, but they're influencing his therapy with the client. So it's good to help him separate from it in order that he can then look at the issue, which are emotions, whatever they might be, issues belonging to the client. The weekend consists of practicals as well. You will be assigned to, you will be divided in groups and practice supervision as well. And I will be going around from one room to another. We include the talks on racism, discrimination, because it's very important. We talk about what happens if the person can be biased about a certain culture and race, and how you handle, how you deal with it. So we include the LGBTQ+, cultural differences, religious differences, how they affect supervision, which is very important, that because years ago in supervision, these weren't talked about, these issues. For example, when I trained as a psychotherapist many years ago in the 70s, when, as Peter said, supervision wasn't really that much attended. We didn't have one single talk on differences, sexual, racial, cultural differences. It was all just taught, but without the techniques how to handle the differences. I hope that stays digits of it anyway.
Yeah, I think basically it's about how to be a clinical supervisor and thinking outside the box with things that perhaps we take for granted as therapists, but as supervisors, we have to be on the lookout for it. And also we need to be aware of the nuances that people are presenting with when they're talking about the cases they're seeing, and the influences from outside that box that might need to be addressed. You know, I've said about being in the box and out of the box. Sometimes you need someone outside looking in. This is what we're teaching, how to do that, how to work with your supervisor and with your supervisee. And as part of what we're also doing, you've got 3 main practice sessions, apart from the practice sessions you've got in the teaching weekends. And within there, what we do is we will be presenting the groups, and you'll be broken into small groups, into role play scenarios where you will be given a complex case. So your partner will have a complex case, and they're playing the role of a therapist, you're playing the role of the supervisee, and so we want you to explore those in the context of clinical supervision. And you've got the multicultural nuances that come in there as well. And the very final of the practical sessions or practice sessions is very much you're going to be doing a proper clinical supervision on each other on a real case. So that element is in there. And also part of the course is that we ask you to carry out clinical supervision sessions with people that we will refer to you as part of the course. And with that, you're going to get mentoring with regard to that. The people we refer, there is a nominal fee that you'll be paid for that. So you can earn what you learn, as they say. So with what we're looking there is helping not only to teach you what clinical supervision is, get you clinically supervising with mentoring from Charles. So you talk about what your experience is as a clinical supervisor in those particular sessions. And just so that you're aware, 80% requirement for the lectures is standard for us, and replacements will be available, but also 100% attendance on the practice sessions and the practical elements with the clinical supervision is part of that. And I noticed, I think, Lila, you had your hand up?
I did, thank you. I just wanted to say I think it's a really great idea to incorporate the differences in terms of race, gender, and so on. I was wondering whether role of systemic racism and all of that is included, or is it more on an individual basis?
Racism in general, so individual, also personal racism, unconscious racism, unconscious prejudices, systemic, you name it. We need to bring that into this concept because, and thank you for raising that, because we are in a multicultural society now. Populations are blossoming multiculturally, and that also means that as therapists we are coming across issues that we need to make sure as therapists, but also as clinical supervisors, we are aware of these multicultural nuances and the racism elements in there, and the xenophobic elements and all of those that come into play. And our role as clinical supervisors to be able to step back and to be able to objectively handle that. And what to do if as a clinical supervisor you feel you can't. And also, we are, since COVID, COVID, terrible thing, but one thing it did was open up the world of virtual therapy. Therefore, as virtual therapists, there are opportunities across the globe. My client base comes from all over the world. Fortunately, they're not all travelling to my my home in Hockley, in Essex, in very south of England. And so we have to, as clinical supervisors, have that understanding of cultural diversity in all its nuances. And we need to also go back to remembering and working with the fact that 95% of psychotherapy traditionally was informed by white Western ideas. And as we are now more and more multicultural, we need to be reflecting this diversity in psychotherapy, which means gaining the understandings from other cultures, other cultural lifestyle choices, etc. It enriches me as a clinical supervisor, as a therapist. It certainly enriches me. As somebody who's helping others, enriches me, and just as a human, it enriches. So we've got to remember that. And the nice thing is, Charles, myself, and others who you'll be working with, we all have a considerable experience in supervising people from different countries and different cultures. So, anything else you want to say about that, Lina?
Thank you for that. I just wanted to add that in terms of the diversity and inclusion space, I've been working in that space for over 20 years now with the context of my career. So I've got a lot of experience, both from a theoretical as well as from a practical and first-hand experience basis. So that's something I could definitely help with. I'm not a trained psychotherapist at all. Psychotherapy and therapy in general is an area I've always been interested in. Would that be a barrier in terms of doing the supervision piece?
No.
Charles?
No, the course isn't for psychotherapists only, or for hypnotherapists only. If you're working as a therapist, being hypnotherapist or psychotherapist, then the course is for you once you have the prerequisites. So, we had already people coming to train as supervisors with us who were not hypnotherapists, for example, but we still had them on the course because the course isn't about hypnotherapy. So yeah, you'll be welcomed. Actually, you might be, if you're already experienced in certain areas, you'll be an asset to the course, because the course is more by discussion than by lecture.
That sounds great. Thank you.
So you'll be welcome to share your knowledge with the rest of the class.
Thank you very much.
And I think that also answers, hopefully, Siva's message in the chat, which says, if I'm working in healthcare sector, how can I explore further through this course? The skills and the knowledge and the approaches work within any sector.
Yes. Yes, it is supervision in general.
Yeah. Which is, when you look at supervision, it's a very standard concept through different professions and different approaches to working with people. They all apply. And it's us as clinical supervisors, we take that knowledge and apply it to the cohort that we're working with. So, and I think one of the things that from the LCCH Asia group is we have a strong legacy of working with people from a multitude of different cultures. The original LCCH's founder, LCCH, was founded in London College of Clinical Hypnosis. Michael Joseph, Hungarian, so he came from an Eastern European culture, and his was from a communist Eastern European culture when he came into it. So we've got that culture, we've got the UK culture, and as you all know, within our own respective countries, you look around the country. UK is not a huge country, but we've got, northern in England, we've got northern people, Midlands people, southern people. We each have our cultures within that. We recognise that. We've got England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales. We've got that. We've got the Cornish culture. So just within that area, we have so many different cultures that need to be addressed. The European cultures come in. We've got Australian culture, certainly big area of, as we all know, where we are is within the Southeast Asia and Asian cultures. With regards to that, we have connections within the United States, South America, and all of those cultures we learn from. And as clinical supervisors, we need to have an awareness of. And an openness to be able to understand that culture as it applies to the therapist that we're supervising and as it applies to their particular cases. So it's a huge area that we work with within that. And as we work, we gain more experience, which again, the reflection back on me is I learn, I understand, my concept of the world is ever expanding. My understanding of different people is ever expanding. And you learn how, as you say, with regard to things like unconscious biases and microaggressions and things like that, how to pick those up and work with them and see the influence it has on the therapeutic journey.
Which is something we'll be talking about, microaggressions. Very interesting.
Lila, go hand again. Or is it not gone down yet?
I don't mean to dominate, but I just wanted to add, I think that is a really important piece in terms of both the systemic element of racism, the elements of trauma that a person has acquired over the lifetime. And it's not just personal trauma, but it's ancestral trauma. So for example, people who've been through the Holocaust or the Nakba or all of these dreadful genocides that we've seen. And there's a lot there that perhaps people haven't always been aware of in the psychology space before, or haven't really been as mindful.
And even family trauma, the family culture, because cultures have their own family cultures within the cultures, and a family will have its own family culture within the family. And those are elements that, as you know, supervisors, we pick up on. And of course, that then enriches our therapy as well. So, and you know, a lot of talking there about us as clinical supervisors, and it can seem a bit scary. Oh my goodness, I'm out there, I'm taking this really important role. Have I got any support? Well, yes. You know, who does support the supervisor? There are many ways of doing it. You can have, of course, a supervisor for your clinical supervision, for being a clinical supervisor. And I point, well, you can't see me pointing to him, but I point you to Charles. He's excellent with that.
We do it. We do it on the course. We do mentoring 1, mentoring 2, mentoring 3, clinical mentoring. You'll be expected to have clients, and if you don't have the clients, it may be that the college can supply you with clients. They come from the advanced course, so it will be that level, more like level 1. And you see them for 3 sessions, and you come to the class with your cases, and I supervise your supervision. So that we have in the course. Again,
and I was going to say it is confidential, by the way.
Of course, that goes without saying, but we will say when the course starts and when we do these practices, you're reminded that it's confidential and the recordings are not taking place. We don't switch the recording on for supervision. Similarly, during the course itself, because it's by discussion, if you're about to discuss something intimate, personal, that you don't want it on record, you state it and I'll switch the recording off for that particular subject. So it's a safe place, and we talk about that on the course, creating a safe place for supervisees, that they come to supervision without being judged, without being belittled. And if they make mistakes, well, what can be learned from the mistakes? Not, oh, you're useless. We don't say that. What can be learned if you made a mistake? How can we avoid it? What can we take from it?
So, I mean, there is support out there during your training, but also after your training. We've got a wide variety of ongoing resources that we're providing, various forums that are out there, specialized cases. We've got clinical supervision, pointing at Charles again, for the clinical supervisor. I have said to clinical supervisor, I need to take this to my supervisor.
Yes.
For advice, and that is good practice. So there's that area that we've got there. We've got specialized trainings that we provide out there on psychological trauma, the addiction, certainly on integrative psychotherapy and what that means and how to work with that, and CBT, especially from the REBT perspective, and a wide variety of regular monthly talks for the supervisors to come to. Also, you get recognition from societies, so BSCH and MSCH, BSCHIP, and also the National Council of Integrative Psychotherapists and International Council of Integrative Psychotherapists. They also recommend our courses, so they're also supportive of our our clinical supervisors. This is all there in order to help you become experts, so you'll always be at the forefront of your practices, that you'll always know and understand that there is always an opportunity to learn more. Always an opportunity within that. Rosanna?
Yeah, so Peter, this course, if I can understand it, at the end of it, how long is this course? And at the end of it, how do we get qualified? Is there an examination? How will we be graded, or I don't know.
The examination is via a Viva, and Charles carries out the Viva. It's what, 30-minute Viva?
20 minutes,
20 minute
minutes.
Viva. So to ensure that you've got that understanding there. The course is three months, is it, Charles? I can't remember.
It is about 3 months. It depends how we program it, but it's about average 3 months.
Yeah, and very interactive. It is not sit there and be lectured at. It is sit there, discuss. So we teach from a Socratic point of view. You've got the online, our learning zone. You have access to that with online resources, reading in there that we do ask you make yourselves familiar with before coming into class, so that we can really open up your perspectives and your ideas and your experience there. And as I say, there are more and more people wanting to be clinical supervisors and needing clinical supervisors out there. Rosanna?
Yeah, sorry, can I ask, do you have a schedule, as in when you wish to start this course, and what is our financial commitment to this? Because
I will pass that on to the salespeople in a minute. So
okay. Yeah, okay.
they're going to be talking about that. So,
Okay.
So yeah, look, I mean, hopefully that's given you an understanding of everything, of where we're going, what we're going, and the important role. I want to emphasize that clinical supervision has and is a growing role within the field of psychotherapy, healthcare, and beyond. Clinical supervision, it's spreading through all sorts of professions. therefore the need for supervisors is paramount and growing all the time. And I've just seen Naz has dropped into the chat the course calendar for you as well. But I'm going to hand back to Julian for a moment now. So Julian.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. The sharing was wonderful, and also for joining us today. I'm sure that everyone will have questions to ask very shortly. I'm just going to give you a few moments to consolidate your thoughts and to prepare those questions, either through the comment section or either through raising your hand and sharing the question across. So while everyone is organizing the question, I have a brief announcement for you. We are extremely invested in clinical supervision and its role in enhancing the therapy profession. So for any of you here who are interested, we have a very special offer for you. We're offering a discount for up to 30% of the course fee for this clinical supervision course. We've collaborated with 2 professional societies and will offer you a free listing on their website as clinical supervisors. For those of you who have successfully completed the training, we'll refer you to our students and graduates. And you'll also receive free access and support and mentorship through forums and peer supervision for 6 months for post-qualification. And with that being said, our course consultant, Naz and Rishka, are here. So please do reach out to them if you do need information about the fees, the courses, and whatnot. I hope Peter has inspired you, and we would like you to get this additional benefit. If you would like to get these additional benefits, we encourage you to sign up in the next 24 hours. That is by 7:30 in Malaysia time, 12:30 in UK time, and 9:30 in Sydney time. We very much hope to meet you again, and that together we can expand the boundaries of safe, accountable practices. It is time to hand it back to you, Peter. Thank you. Thank you so much. You're muted, Peter, by the way.
No, I'm trying to find out which of my screens my unmute is on. yeah, it was wonderful. It looks like the bridge of the Starship Enterprise in front of me. And you kind of think, where am I looking? Where am I looking? Well, look, thank you, everyone. Charles and I are here to ask questions, and if there are questions that are more to do with the admin side, we'll pass them on to Risk and Naz. So anybody got any other questions that you'd like to ask about this journey that we're offering? I'll say what I think one of the benefits we get from being a clinical supervisor is it takes, because of the reflection and the learnings that we have to go through to ensure we're top of our game, but also from what we hear from our clinical supervisees, it takes our role as therapists, as professionals, to another interesting level, something you can't teach in a classroom, because it's a vicarious learning from others' experience that we gain and reflect on. So anybody got anything that they would like to ask? He says, looking at you on my other screen here. It was Julian who told me about 2 screens. I'm blaming him for me not having my Starship Enterprise set up. Okay. Well, look, I'm sure the team will be connecting with you. Please do connect with the team as well, and ask your questions there. And hopefully, very much hope we're going to be seeing some of you on the course. Charles will be guiding you through that. He has so much experience and knowledge, and one of the wonderful things about Charles is he's always willing to share it. So take the top of his head up and pick his brains if you're going on the course, because you'll learn so much. Okay, anyone? Okay, so what I'll say is thank you to everyone. Thank you, Julian, and Naz, and Charles, and Riska, and all of you. And I will hand back to to Julian to close the session.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your time and for this wonderful session. With that, I will off this meeting. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Peter.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Charles, Julian.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
night.
Bye-bye. Thank
Good
you.
Good
night.
night. Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night.